To make your bunting, you'll need a few things. The template from your pack and a pencil. The tape in your pack. Fabric cut to 25 centimetres wide by any length. Scissors and pins or clips. Lay your fabrics right sides together, right sides facing each other. And with this stripe, you can choose how you want to line up the front and back stripes. So you can make them match together, or if you offset them, make the front and back different. Take your template and your pencil, line up the template, edge of the template with the edge of your fabric, and draw around it. You can use a pencil, pen. Then move your template to the opposite side of the fabric and leaving a gap, because you have to cut your pieces of bunting apart. You can draw around the template again. The line you're drawing is the stitching line, so be sure to leave a couple of centimetres so you can cut the pieces of bunting apart. And then just keep going. Be sure to leave a gap so that you can cut the pieces apart. And here we go, speed it up to finish drawing out enough bunting to fill up your fabric. Now take your pins and put some pins into the fabric. One for each corner is good. They don't need to overlap the stitch line, just to hold those layers together. So each piece of bunting, 3 pins will be enough, just to hold them together when you stitch down the lines that you've drawn. And then you're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew on those lines. You're going to go all the way down one side and then all the way down the other. So set your sewing machine up with a straight stitch about 3mm to 2.5mm long, and start at one end. Do a nice little reverse at the beginning. Sew down on that line that you've drawn. When you get to the corner, the point, drop your needle into the fabric and raise your presser foot so you can pivot, turn and finish that triangle, and reverse again at the end. And then you can just pull your threads a bit slack and position the fabric to sew the next one along. So you don't need to cut your threads in between. And in that way, sew all the pieces of bunting down one side, and then at the end, turn around and go the other way. This is speeded up. No one can really sew this fast. Now take out all your pins. And with your scissors, cut your bunting apart. You want to leave about 1 centimetre to 1/2 centimetre around all of your pieces of bunting as a seam allowance. Don't cut closer than 1/2 centimetre. You could use pinking shears for this, but I think these scissors are great, so I just like to use these. You can trim a little bit closer to those points if you want to. You see that I don't cut the corners off. I don't like to weaken the corners like that. There's enough room for those bits of seam allowance to fit in there. Now, here's a trick with tweezers, or you can use a knitting needle to turn the points. So hold that corner with the tweezers and push it through, and then being careful not to poke through your fabric, wiggle into that corner until it looks good. And with a knitting needle, turn it first with your finger and then push gently with the knitting needle. Again, you don't want to push through that point. Now press your bunting with an iron on the ironing board so all the edges are nice and neat. Be careful that you don't leave a lot of the seam allowance inside. Roll the edges to the outside. And once that's done, you can cut off all those little bunny ears that are sticking up. Now take your tape, whatever you're using, twill tape, herringbone's really good. This is some bias cut tape that I had handy. Measure about 25 centimetres in so that you've got a beginning of tape that you can use to tie up your bunting. And position the piece of bunting halfway across the tape, fold it over so that it's nestled into a little fold that's halfway through the tape. Now, it would have been a bit easier if I'd pressed this first, but I didn't. So feel free to press a fold. It will make it a bit easier. Okay. So a few pins to hold it together. And then measure about 8 centimetres from one piece of bunting to the next. Mark that with a pin so I can start putting in the next piece. And in the same way, pin all of the bunting to the tape. And once you've pinned all your bunting in, measure another 25 centimetres at the end so that you've got something to tie it up with. And now we're going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch all the way down. Now take it to the sewing machine and we will stitch the tape to the bunting. Now I've set my machine up to do a wide zigzag because it just makes it a bit easier to hit the front and back of the tape at the same time. Now I don't need to worry that I'm going to have any bits not caught on the underside. And you can see here I like to use my small scissors to hold the tape down while I'm sewing. Sort of becomes my fingers, but I can see a bit better. You could use an awl for this as well. My scissors are handy. So just carefully arrange those folds as you go, and you can see I'm pulling my pins out before they reach the foot. because the pins can make it all a little bit too wobbly. And off we go. We're going to sew that all together. And the very last thing is to just fold over the ends of the tape and stitch those so that they don't fray. And your bunting is done. You can go and hang it up.